Russia has been losing a lot of tanks in the war in Ukraine, and they're quickly reaching a point where it will no longer be able to replace those losses. One particular type of tank of note is the T-80, specifically here, the T-80B and BV. T-72 tank losses have been slowing down for a long time now, as there's not enough left in storage to replace them. The T-80Bs have to pick up that slack. However, when they're gone, it's unclear how Russia will be able to keep up any longer. After that, all that really remains is ancient T-55s and T-62s, as well as a small trickle of new tanks they build. So just how many do they have left, and how long till they're gone? Russia has what you might call two main families of tanks, the T-72 and the T-80. There are many differences, but one major one is the type of engine they use. T-72s and their subsequent T-90s are diesel, while T-80s use turbine engines, although there are a few exceptions like the Ukrainian T-80UD. But each engine type has their own pros and cons. Turbine engines typically give a higher power output, torque, maneuverability on good terrain, and better fuel efficiency at high output. Diesel though are simpler, they're easier to maintain, more fuel efficient at idle and low power, which is how a typical tank spends most of its time. So why do they have both? The US after all only has one type currently, the M1 Abrams, which also has a turbine engine. In the mid to late Cold War, the Soviets essentially wanted two different types of tanks. One high-tech, state-of-the-art tank, the T-80, and another good, quick, and cheap mobilization tank to produce en masse, the T-72. In total, tens of thousands of T-72s were made, yet just over 5,000 T-80s were built. After the Soviet Union collapsed, Russia pushed aside the T-80s in favor of the T-72 and T-90s due to the T-80s' higher operating and maintenance costs, as well as what they saw was poor performance in the Chechen Wars. And this pretty much brings us up to date until the start of the Ukraine war in 2022. The T-72 family dominated Russia's active tank fleet with thousands in active service, while there were just a few hundred T-80s. But they still have those several thousand T-80s sitting in storage, bringing us to the topic of this video. There are 6 storage bases that have T-80BVs. I bought satellite imagery of each, and HIMARS, who helped out a ton here, compared them to pre-war numbers as well as last year's numbers, and now. So to get into it, first, the 1295th, pre-war it had 136, but by mid-2023, 0. And again now, 0. The base is pretty much empty of them. They do have garages, which I'll get into later. The 1311th went from 86 pre-war down to 71 now, so not a big drop. The 769th, 41, now down to 13. The 111th, 318 down to just 33 now. That one was by far the biggest drop. Nearly 90% of those T-80B and BVs are gone. The 22nd went from 418 pre-war down to just 118 now, and the 6018th from 208 down to just 47. So major drops across the board. That all brings us to a total number of visible, good T-80B variants in storage went from roughly 1,200 before the war to less than 300 now. That's a drop of nearly 1,000, and that's just T-80B and BVs alone. However, as I mentioned, a very important note is that there are a lot of garages that could hold these tanks, and obviously we can't see inside them. But looking at them, we can get some hints and give us a range of potential tank numbers. First, we know they hold 18 across and up to 2 deep, so a maximum of 36 per garage. Also, these garages don't only hold tanks, there's also BMPs, trucks, etc. So, we broke it down to a minimum, if they were all empty, and a maximum, if every single one of these garages were stored with tanks. And we can also form a prediction of when they might finally run out. And here it is, the result of all the work. The red line shows only visible tanks. As you can see, they would run out roughly mid-2026. And also, you might notice that the rate of decline slows down. There are a few reasons for that. One is that the decline rate likely hasn't slowed down that much, it's just that the decline is coming from tanks and garages, so it's not reflected because we can't see them. Also, other remaining tanks might be beyond economical repair. Then the top yellow line being the max if all the garages were filled with none ever removed. Then finally, the orange being the best possible guess we can come up with. And that takes into account Russia likely would be removing the best possible tanks that would likely be kept inside of garages first, hence the quicker rate of decline shown. And that puts them at running out possibly within a year. So, in 1 year, that could be the end of an era. No more T-80B family. But that doesn't mean there won't be any more seen on the battlefield right away. First, some of these BVs are likely being pulled from storage to be upgraded into T-80BVMs, and we've seen plenty of videos of Russia doing that. Also, once a tank is pulled from storage, it'll then be sent to a tank repair factory or a plant where, depending on how much maintenance is required and repairs it needs, or to be upgraded to a BVM, it might spend anywhere from a few weeks to several months there. So in theory, once every last T-80B variant is gone from storage, you won't expect to see a shortage at the front in Ukraine until several months later. In reality though, Russia, and for that matter any country, would start to use tanks less and less as their supply dwindles. So in one twisted sense, you could say Russia will never run out of tanks. Each unit would have less and less of them, which means less and less in positions to be destroyed. The results, though, would be the same. The already quickly shrinking number of T-72s, and now the nearly depleted T-80Bs, means all Russia really has left is the few and much older tanks, along with the few new T-90s they can produce. And once they get to that point, they're going to be in real trouble.